What's up, guys? My name is Ryan Patrick. I'm the host of New Joke City. We're here in the Big Apple looking for the next big up-and-coming comedian and watching what their process is from taking material from the streets and perfecting it, bringing it to the stage. Make sure you follow us on Instagram and Facebook and keep an eye out for our YouTube page.
All right, sorry guys, we have to cut this thing short because we have people ruining the show. I'm sorry guys, thank you. Sorry, bye. Fake out. We did the old fake out.
That was really good for like 90% of it.
I know.
I know. You just kind of face planted right at the finish line.
I know. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to New Joke City. I'm your host, Ryan Patrick, and today we have a very, very special guest that we'll be interviewing, Eddie Brill. Eddie, how are you?
I'm good, man. It's nice to see you.
Thanks so much for taking the time to talk with us. With our show, we like to interview the up-and-coming comedians throughout New York City, pick their brain, what it's like to just try to grind and rise in the ranks. You've already done that. you've like done everything.
But what's interesting is that it's always work. And you have to put in the work no matter how many years you've done it, because the only way to really learn to be a great comedian is to do stage time. You can't teach it. You definitely can't get it in a book. You have to be on stage to do it. So you can do it for 30 years, 40 years, and then all of a sudden, you learn something new. You get more comfortable on stage.
So where did you start out, I guess? And how long have you been doing stand-up for?
It's interesting because I took a break. So I started in the late 70s in college in an improv and sketch group, and it was wildly successful. And it was fun. It was really fun to be wildly successful at a young age. And we were in college, and sex and drugs and rock and roll of that era. And we worked really hard, and we really loved what we were doing. And then I started doing some stand-up because friends of mine did it, and it was kind of cool. And then after a while, I was like, I'm really not that good at this. It's hard. I think I'm gonna, maybe do some other career. And I went into advertising and things like that. And I lied for a living. Which is what advertising is. And then I went back because the comedy is telling the truth for a living.
Yeah.
So it fits better in my soul to be able to tell the truth and then make your career out of that.
Do you think advertising kind of drew you to comedy as well, because it was the complete opposite of what you were doing?
Well, where I went to school, there was a guy whose father was in advertising, had a company, and he recommended me, and it was kind of fun. I had ads on television, and I'd wake up on my little alarm clock radio and I'd hear one of the ads that I had written or whatever. And then I started doing voiceovers for them, and it was kind of nice creating commercials. And I was always doing something creative, but an opportunity came for me to get back into stand-up. It was about a 3-year break I took. And in 1984, July 29th, 1984, an opportunity came for me to run a comedy club, and I performed, and I haven't stopped since.
That's what's it?
That's last century.
Yeah. What's it like owning? Because I feel like everybody wants to do comedy, but I don't really hear too many people talk about like getting the opportunity to run an entire club. How was that?
The good news is that since I was booking the club with my friend who was Colin Quinn, he helped me do this. We were able to find the best comics and the people we thought who were hard workers, and it's a name-dropping list of people who just kind of started out. Susie Essman and Mario Cantone, and I go on and on and on with names.
Yeah.
And we were all kids together, and it was really, really fun. Plus, we were guaranteed work every weekend because we were booking it. And Colin and I would switch off hosting the shows, because that's where the hard work is, in hosting, and an important job. And so I didn't own the club. That was there was a manager there and his wife, and they were very good to us. And then he decided to sell the club, and that's when that club sort of started going downhill, because we had built a comedy room in the basement.
Really?
And it was really beautiful, and everything was, the lights, the sound, everything was spectacular. And these two guys came in. They were nice enough, but they were I was going to say more something else, but they were just into what they were into, and they ruined what we had and forced us to go upstairs of this. And so now they're putting music downstairs. So now upstairs was like a Swiss chalet, and downstairs was this gorgeous comedy club that we had built.
Wow.
So now the music of the bass player was always coming up through the floor, and it, you're performing to the music almost.
Yeah.
And it really, it became it took away the beauty and the work we had put into it. So around that time, around 86 or so, I was going out to LA a lot, back and forth, New York and LA, and I ended up getting residences, splitting apartments with comics in both cities, and still running the club. And I decided I was going to give it up to this guy who was a New York booker, and he was a very trustworthy guy. He thought about it, and he said, you know what, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to go to LA too and do that.
Wow.
So then another guy that I knew who had complained to me that I didn't use him as a booker, I said, but you live in Boston, and why would you, just a New York City room. And one of the reasons I'm giving it up is because I'm going back and forth New York to LA. He said, I'll take it over. And it became the Boston Comedy Club, which they used in Crashing and all that.
Yeah.
But, that was where, I started that scenario there back in 84. And so, it was a success, but as successful as it was, because you can do stand-up here if you... But as successful it wasn't as beautifully, it wasn't tailored toward comedy. We had a special scenario in the club that we had started back in 84.
Oh my gosh, yeah, especially, I can't even imagine trying to get jokes out over music. You're spilling your heart out on stage.
Right.
It's terrible.
You could do it, but it's not the ultimate. What we had when it was called the Paper Moon, and it was downstairs from where the Boston Comedy Club eventually became. It was one of the best comedy clubs in the country, and people were fighting to come to work it.
Wow, that's wild.
Yeah.
Now you're going to New York, you're doing LA, you're all over the country.
Yeah, and then in 1989, a friend of mine, was over in England and gave birth prematurely, him and his wife, and we went to visit him and started doing stand-up there, and it was as weird as, what's the right word for it? As they've been doing, British comedy's been around forever and ever, and it's some of the best comedy in the world, but they weren't as advanced in the stand-up comedy world as a lot of Americans were, but they were funnier in a lot of ways. And the thing I learned about going to Europe is that there was so much pandering in the United States in comedy clubs, where comedians were getting applause off of the backs of other people's work, like, hey, let's hear it for the troops, or hey, how about those old people? They don't, they were relying on applause, where the British comics were relying on great comedy and, telling jokes, and they wanted laughter. Laughter is much more our goal than applause.
Wow.
So I really loved it, and I started going a lot to England.
Really?
Then the British comics said, you like England, London, well, we're gonna hook you up with Ireland. And so I went to Ireland in 1996, and it was phenomenal. A country of storytellers, some of the best storytellers in the world, from young kids to old men and women who would just tell these stories. And so that made me better. And then they said, well, there's a club in Paris. And then the guys in Paris said, oh, you have to go to Australia. So I started working the world. And became a better comedian because I was forced to not pander as much and forced to work with this really high-end comedy scenario. And it kept building and building and building, and I was lucky to be there when it was building.
I'm just thinking of people in New York City, you have to tailor your material to work well in all 5 boroughs. You had to tailor your material to work in almost every part of the world.
But the difference is you write for humans as opposed to writing for New York. You write. So when you write, everyone has dreams. Like you go to sleep, you dream. Well, if you talk about dreams on stage, people are not going to go, I don't understand this dream thing that you Americans have that we don't have in Paris. You know what I mean?
True. Yeah.
And also places like Paris and Hong Kong and places like that were mostly expats who were dying for English-speaking entertainment.
Really?
Yeah, so they were, China used to be owned by England. And then when I went there in 2001, it was just after the Chinese took back their country from the Brits. So now you have all these Brits who are working there, and they're dying for English-speaking entertainment. And
that's wild. So I guess what was the bulk of your material? Was it very observational? Was it very personal? What did you really kind of like
it's a combination. It was very observational.
Yeah.
There's a lot of wordplay because, I'm a wordplay person. George Carlin was my hero and still is in a sense. But it started morphing into storytelling more the combination of being observational and then some storytelling. And the more comfortable I got, the more I was maybe ad-lib more, play with the audience more. I had this confidence that I didn't have before, and it just keeps growing. And what's also interesting is that like a lot of comics will go on stage and expect a certain thing, and not everyone, but I didn't expect anything. I had no expectations. I would go out there with just a clean slate. I maybe knew what I was going to start with, maybe knew what I was going to end with, but I just played. And
really?
And it really, it grew me. I grew as a performer, as a comedian.
How long did it take to get over that hump? Because I feel like going out with just, how you're starting, know how you're ending, like, that's kind of a big mental obstacle to get over.
But that's the challenge that you want to. That's the beauty of it. And comedy is the one industry where the older you get, the better you get.
Very true.
Because you only get better from stage time. So, there's examples of comics who are very young who do, like Dave Chappelle, knocked it out of the box right away because he told his truth immediately because he didn't know better, and he came out, and that's why he stood out above everybody else. Where a lot of us, we were acting like comedians at the beginning. Yeah. And as soon as we got rid of the bullshit and the stuff that was holding us down, we started improving. So, that's why when you watch Don Rickles or Phyllis Diller or George Burns, people 80s, 90s, they're some of the funniest people in the world. Unfortunately, in the industry, they don't look at it. They're not savvy enough, a lot of people, to realize that you're not washed up when you get older. You're better when you get older. And I'm not saying it just because I'm older. I'm saying it because I've seen it throughout history.
Yeah. You're more experienced, it makes
more
sense.
stage time, more life experience.
Yeah.
And also you have, as an older comic, you also have to understand that, watch the young comics and see what they're doing. Be there to support them and let them know if you work hard, it will pay off. And also learn from the kinds of things they're doing. Yeah. Because, we watch each other and we grow from that experience.
That's so cool. I feel like we haven't even gotten halfway through this interview, and I'm like, this is so wild. You're doing comedy in London. You're doing comedy in Ireland. How long were you out in Ireland for? For a while?
I would go back and forth all the time. In 1997, I got a job working at the Letterman show. So you would have 10 weeks a year off, like all the TV shows, 10 weeks a year off, and I would work 4 days a week. So on the 10-day off weeks, I would go to Europe, and because it was, get jet lag and you want to spend some time there. So I would go for 8 to 10 days at a time. And in the summer at Letterman, we always had a 17-day break. And that's when I would go to Australia, go to Hong Kong, because, first of all, when you fly to Australia from New York, you need a day to sleep when you get there.
Yeah.
It's pretty wild, yeah.
Oh my gosh, yeah. So you did that. You were one of the most integral parts, I feel like, of the Letterman show.
Yeah,
you warmed the crowd up. up. You ended up booking everybody. Like
I did a lot of things there. I a few times, I think like 5 or 6 times, I got to do the opening announcement which was one of the coolest things.
That's really cool.
I got to be in a couple of skits. I got to sit, be at the desk with Dave. I've got to produce. I got to warm up every night on that incredible stage in that beautiful theater with that amazingly brilliant host. And I learned a lot from watching him. It was a lesson every night. And then I saw these incredible musicians and actors, and I was so up on what was going on because I went to this job every day. Now I couldn't tell you who's who in every, I'm not as up on everything that I was when I worked there. Yeah. That's because the other producers, the music producers, the political producers, the acting producers, who brought the actors in, they were incredible at what they did.
Yeah.
So I learned a lot from working with the best of the best. The lighting people were the best. The camera people were the best. The main cameraman at Letterman was Walter Cronkite's cameraman.
Really?
Yeah. So you had Dave Dorset, and you had the best of the best. So, and of course Dave was the best at any of those guys. Carson was great, but after Carson, Dave was the man.
Yeah.
And he was one of the greatest ever. So you're working every day with this incredible thing in this theater that was spectacular.
That's unreal.
And then when you had a killer show, and then you had to throw it all away and get ready for it the next day for a brand new show, and you never can phone it in.
It seems like you were involved. You had at least some kind of hand in so many different aspects behind the scenes, right?
Yeah.
Because I know you were in TV shows. You were all around the country.
I lost out on some experiences because of working at Letterman Show, which was fine.
Yeah, that's
I got asked to be in a couple of films. I got to be in one film with Tracy Morgan called 30 Years to Life.
Yeah.
I did that film because that happened to be filming, and they needed me for like 5 days. It was filming on a week off from Letterman, so it worked out. But, I had Bill Burris, the comedian, for that one night, and I got a call from Curb Your Enthusiasm, we need you for this scene, and I couldn't do it because I was working at Letterman.
Oh,
it's not, I wish I could do both, but, one of my friends said, what are you worried about? You can't do Curb Your Enthusiasm, but you did Letterman.
Yeah, really.
So don't ever take it for granted that what we were doing was
so I guess the other thing is, do you feel like stand-up really plays into other things? Like, we usually talk about, once you're fully ingrained in stand-up, is there anything else you would like to do? Because a lot of comics, they try to do acting, writing, producing. Do you think stand-up is, I guess you would consider that your foundation, and that allows you to kind of branch off into other avenues?
I still love it like the very first day. I love stand-up. That's my foundation. That's again the truth. I'm telling the truth. I'm having fun. I'm getting people to laugh, which is a very difficult thing to do to humans.
Yeah.
Wish I had a better word than thing. But I have to get an English major in. But it's still spectacular to me.
Yeah.
But I love all the other things. I love writing. I've written scripts. I've acted. I've sang with bands. I wrote a movie script. I'm working on ghostwriting a book for someone.
Really?
I'm producing and executive producing 2 different projects right now. So, and then I'm booking comics as well in different venues and different gigs, and it's really great.
So you're constantly just staying busy.
Yeah, the only thing I'm not really great at is drawing. So if you need someone to be an artist,
outsource it.
I'm out. I don't spread myself too thin. But I do like. I like to do different things. I like to, it's just, you never get bored.
Yeah.
Like, what am I doing today? Well, I'm doing an interview, and then I'm going to watch a hockey game, and then I'm going to go maybe watch a film, which is odd because usually on Saturday nights I'm doing stand-up.
Yeah.
But because clubs are up and down with audiences, you're not always getting work. And then this week I have meetings for, a book thing that I'm working on, somebody else's book thing I'm working on.
Wow.
And then I have stand-up next week, and I'm always doing something that I love.
I feel like you're fully embracing the business aspect of it too. You know what I mean? Like, some people just do stand-up and they get on stage and they get off and that's it. But it seems like it's the same amount of work when it comes to networking, just meeting people. You know, you said you're ghostwriting, executive producing, like.
Yeah, it's, you know, your word is the most important thing, and being able to deliver. So again, working at Letterman, I work with the best of the best. So you bring your game up to that level, and that's what you shoot for. You try to work with the best of the best. And if you're not doing something, you create something, and then you have no excuse if you're creating it. I mean, you might not be able to sell it, you might not be able to do it, but at least you try. And then if that doesn't work, you try something else, and you
That's
just
awesome.
keep doing different things. As far as the businesses, you know, that's why you have managers and agents. And they do all that stuff. But and it's, you know, when I was booking Letterman, in a sense, I was an agent, and I dealt with a lot of great agents and managers, and that's how I got my manager through, you know, booking Jake Johansson for Letterman, or, you know. So look, I'm having the time of my life. You know, that's really
That's
important.
awesome. I feel like, you know, some people can get tired of it, they can get weary of it, but like you're fully embracing it, and you're like fully ingrained in it. It's it looks, you make it look fun, you know?
Yeah, and then there's ups and downs, like life. Life is a series of ups and downs. Like, but if you like, you look at an EKG machine, ups and downs, you know, it means you're alive. You know? And if you're not taking any chances, you might as well be flatlining. You know, you're pretty much doing that. So you know, during the pandemic, it bummed me out because I was at a place that was really ready to like take it to the next stratosphere, and I let myself. I am the only person to blame for not being more creative or being more healthy, taking care of myself during that time. But I can't sit around and complain, or you know, or sit and, you know, wonder what would have been if I would have done this. I just you know, the only thing that exists in the world right now is what we're doing, and then when that's over, then I got to do something else. I have to worry about that, but I can't solve other things and focus on anything else other than what we're doing right now.
That's true. That's I love that. I feel like that's such a big thing, is like always staying busy in any different avenue.
And also, it's a thing I call put the fork down, is because when we're eating, we'll put the fork in and we put it in our mouth, and instead of tasting the food and savoring it and going, oh my God, this is so delicious, we have the fork in the next bite already. So put the fork down, enjoy the moment you're in, and then when you're done with that moment, start a new moment.
That's good. I like that.
Yeah.
I feel like we definitely, I know.
I've been putting the fork in too much the last year and a half.
Hey, I mean, pandemic, I feel like everybody took a toll on all of us. You know? I feel like I don't embrace the moment enough.
We all, it's very hard to, especially the way the society works. They constantly bombard us with stuff to keep us from being in the moment.
What moment stands out, I guess, throughout your entire career so far?
I've had so many. I remember one moment that's so little compared to other things, but it was huge. I was in Massachusetts, and I had 2 gigs, and I borrowed a friend's car, and I did the first gig, and it was incredible. It was like, this is what I do. And I was driving to the next one. Beautiful day. I put the music up really loud, and I just sat there, and I was, that moment I'll never forget, because I was so happy. Just, you know, I still had another gig to get to, but there was great music, beautiful weather. I just finished the gig that was outstanding. I'm doing what I love for a living. That moment will always stay there.
That's awesome.
And then there's a million great moments. You know, I worked at, you know, a gig at Radio City Music Hall, a corporate show. I went there as a child to the 6,000 seat arena, and I was opening for Aretha Franklin on this corporate show, and she wasn't ready, so I had to go on. It was scheduled for 10 to 12 minutes, and I went on for 45 because she wasn't ready. And here I am at 6,000 people in their seats, and I have them in the palm of my hands. And when I said goodnight, when I was finished, the crowd exploded, and my heart nearly exploded because it was amazing. You know, I went to do a show. I was in LA. It was 1987, November, and I kind of moved there now more than I was going back and forth. And somebody came up to me after my show and said, look, we'd like you to do this show. And I thought they said the Shriners. And you know what the Shriners are? It's like the Elks Club, or it's just a bunch of older gentlemen with funny outfits.
Yeah.
So, but it was $200, and I said, yeah, well, it's $1 million for me, and I'll do it. And luckily, I had a sport jacket, I could go. And when I showed up to the gig, it wasn't the Shriners. I misheard them. It was the Shrine Auditorium, which is an 8,800-seat venue where the Academy Awards were being held during that time. And it was the Shrine Auditorium, not the Shriners, and it was a charity gig. And I went to my dressing room, which I've never had a dressing room. I barely had an apartment, and it was Jerry Lee Lewis and Jimmy Stewart and the Shirelles, and I almost was like, what's going on here? And then I had to follow Jimmy Stewart, and he's on stage reading his poetry and very beautiful flowers and trees, and I just was looking at him going, I'm next.
Oh my God.
And then luckily I did very well, and I had a friend who was the off-stage announcer, the only person I knew in the whole building, or at least knew that I knew, and he gave me a great hint. He said, look, it's a big room, so take your time, let the laughs, let the words get to the back of the room, because they're going to bounce back. And so I took my time. I was more deliberate than normal, and it really worked, and it went well. And when I was done, I walked off stage, and there was Jimmy Stewart on the side going, very funny, Eddie, and I'm like, what?
Wow.
And then Jerry Lee Lewis pushed him out of the way to say, you're very funny, son. I can't take my picture with you, and
that's a huge moment.
it was incredible, and I didn't know anyone except, this one guy who was Vic Dunlop, who was the offstage announcer. And then I had to go back to the Comedy Store to do a set later that night. And I'm, 10 feet off the ground, and the crowd hated me and heckled me.
Really?
And I told them to go to hell. I said, look, I just opened for Jimmy Stewart likes me, so.
Wow.
But it just humbles you and brings you right back down.
Yeah,
there,
really. I guess the one thing I definitely need to ask you, and I feel like not too many know about this side of the business, is like, I don't know, I guess, do you have any information or tips when it comes to just navigating show business? Like, we hear how cutthroat, like, how disingenuous people are.
That's in every business.
Yeah.
In lawyers and, restaurants and, people, so you don't focus on that.
Yeah.
You focus on being the best you possibly can.
Yeah.
And Steve Martin, I think, was the one who said it. I don't know, not word for word, but he said, just be so good at what you do that they can't help but use you.
Be undeniable.
And don't, protect yourself, which I've unfortunately not been able to protect myself in every scenario, because there's always, there's people who are trying to drag you down. So, but try to protect yourself from being in those, put yourself in a scenario that would work for you, and also at the same time, just be great at what you do.
Yeah.
And just keep working. The only way you can be great at it is put the work in.
Just keep hammering away.
Yeah. That's because there's a lot of not talented people who are very successul, and that's okay. They're just great at what they do as business, and and then there's a lot of really talented people, and they're playing at the the Holiday Inn off of Route 9 in Framingham, Massachusetts, and they're more talented than any singer who's on television at the time. So the only formula is just to put the work in, get stage time if you're a stand-up, get stage time. It's the only way to grow.
That's awesome. I mean, it's the truest advice, I feel like that's what a lot of people have pretty much said to us. It's just put the work in, and it'll all kind of take care of itself.
Yeah, I think that's the key, is to put the work in. Go to your job. Your job is to do some writing each day, or 5 days a week, or if it's only 1 day a week for 20 minutes, just do whatever you can to do it, and also surround yourself with good people, positive people who won't lie to you. Because, as a comedian, you finish your show and people come up to you, hey, great set, and they didn't even see you. Because they're being nice. They're not mean or evil. So you have to realize that not everyone is watching you. But you have friends that will tell you the truth, and that's really the key.
Yeah.
At Letterman, he surrounded himself with the best of the best. And he knew that if he pushed us to all play at our best, at that high energy, that high level, that the show would pay off in that in that fashion.
Your network of people is pretty high tier.
Yeah, I would like to do it all. I want to do it all, except drawing.
Except drawing.
I tried.
Can't do it. Yeah, it's not worth it. It's tough. You can always outsource it.
Yeah, exactly.
You can get a college kid to do it from NYU. No big deal.
And the situations I have where we're doing a film festival or comedy festival, and you want to add film, so you call NYU and say, "Bring us your best students," and we'll put some of their films in a thing. And
that's actually, I mean, and the one thing, if you don't mind me asking too, before we kind of wrap this up, I guess when it comes to writing, you said it's telling your story and stuff. At least for me, like, I feel like writing comedy, a lot of it comes from pain.
Yeah.
Do you think
you find out what the essence is? Say the essence is, like I'll give you an example of one joke where I always laughed about Adam and Eve and how they got names, because they're the only two people on Earth, and who's given them names? You know what I mean? No one was.
True.
And I always thought it's so funny. It's like there's Adam, calling the shots. Was Eve calling the shots? Did they have name tags? You don't really know how they got names.
Yeah.
So that's the sort of essence of the joke. So then I created I wanted to find out what you create a foundation. What's the foundation? Foundation, a lot of stories are just made up. And they're lessons and all this kind of stuff. So what you do is you figure out all, Noah's Ark, or there's a lot of BS, a lot of these stories. First 7 days on Earth, first day God said let there be light, but there was no light, and then fourth day creates the sun, the moon, and the stars. Well, it was like, what was he using for light in the first few, you know what I mean? It's like a lot of stuff that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
So that's the foundation of it, and then you silly it up by, putting...
As you go.
Yeah, and I made Adam kind of a dick, and I was like, yeah, baby, this is how it's going to work. We're going to have names, and you be Eve, and I'll be Adam, and she's tougher than him, as typical, and said, really, look, if I hear something and it's not me, Jew, and then he was like, come on, baby, I want to have names. He goes, yeah, really, well, I want to see other people, but it's just the two of us.
Do you I guess when you first started out, did you have anything that you were really personal to you, like personal experiences? I know, when I first started out, I was trying to think of, I'm a new dad. I dig into the family baby material.
What's
and
the
stuff.
essence? Always go to what's the essence. That's what I do. Everyone's different.
Yeah.
What's the essence? What are we talking about? What's the foundation? Foundation's the truth, and how you skew from the truth. For me, I remember being, as a kid, seeing my grandmother's teeth in the glass and screaming, and when she opened her mouth to ask me what was wrong, I saw that there was no teeth in her mouth, and I screamed more. Not fun, not funny when you're going through it, but bringing it. This is early in my career. I had a joke about that, and I did the act out of what happened, and it got laughs because I made a very scary scenario that everyone can relate to. Made it very silly, and it's kind of based on the truth, on a true story.
It is what it is.
Yeah. What's the matter, Eddie?
Oh my gosh, that's great, Eddie.
And then I thought of I got your nose because now you have teeth and now you have nose, and so you just keep, it's just, you have to be skewed. You have to be, comedy is not everyone can be a comedian. You can't, like I said, you can't teach it.
Yeah.
People think you can. You can help people with the how to write a joke, but then you're writing a joke just like all these other people write a joke.
Yeah, true.
It's got to be your own thing. It's got, I remember Don Rickles said it, you can't learn it in a book. Henry Winkler, who I interviewed, had said, he said, look, I have a hard time with reading. He has dyslexia, and he always had it. He never read a book, but he's a great actor, and he had to read scripts and had to learn them,
Wow.
And he's a genius, so you can't teach it. It's got to be from here.
Really?
This is where it all happens.
Yeah.
Right here in your gut. Like when I hear Nina Simone sing, I know that she's one of the greatest. People ask me, how do you ever book a comedian? I go, I'm looking for Nina Simone. Someone who goes under the surface and is not afraid to to take chances and make a mistake and be their most authentic selves.
Is there anybody that you see on the scene now that really like stands out? Yeah.
There's a million. Mark Normand is great, and Joe List is great, and that's just two comics. And there's a young woman named Jocelyn Chia, who's from Singapore, who is just funny as hell, and insecure in that she doesn't believe she's funny, which makes her funnier. And I talk to her a lot and try to book her in things, and I look like a hero because I'm, booking this comedian who's doing really well, and they go, "Well, you book great comedians." Well, I found the Nina Simone's.
Yeah.
So
that's great.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, Eddie, thank you so much. Where can everybody, find your work? Twitter, Instagram?
Facebook is like a very hard place because I'm almost full, but I'm in Facebook, and you can find all the places I'm at. My Twitter is Eddie_Brill. My Instagram is Eddie Comics, @EddieComic. And I'm sure I'm on a bunch of things, I don't know what, but you can. It's not hard to find.
Just Google it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, right.
I sort of have the Instagram thing. I get a lot of people writing me there asking me for help, and I also, I run workshops all over the world, and I also one-on-one help comics. And again, I'm not teaching them to be a comedian. I'm helping them. I'm being their eyes and ears and helping them take their stuff to the next level. So if that interests you, you can contact me that way.
Great to know.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, guys, thank you for tuning in. This is the world famous Eddie Brill. Thanks once again, Eddie.
It's my pleasure.
New Joke City, thanks so much for watching, guys. We'll talk to you soon.
Take care.